Find the sum by hand, then use a calculator to check your work. Now these problems are similar to what we've seen before, only the numbers are getting a little bit larger. So we just want to be a little bit careful to remember things about lining numbers up and keeping track of arithmetic when we have to do it by hand. We will be able to use our calculators for a check, but only for a check. We have to be sure that we can work these problems out by hand without the use of a calculator first. So over here on the right, we just kind of remember the rules for working with these signed numbers when we're doing adding or subtracting. If the signs are the same, we're going to take the sum of the absolute values, we're going to add the number parts, and we're going to keep the sign. But if the signs are different, we're going to take the difference. We're going to subtract the absolute value parts, and we're going to use the sign of the number with the larger absolute value. So our first problem, we have negative 357 plus a negative 421. And since the signs on those are both the same, notice that they both have a negative sign. So there's the negative sign there on 357 plus a negative 421. We're just going to go ahead and add the number parts. So we're going to take 357 and we're going to add to that 421. And when we do that, we're just going to line these things up and just add straight down. So there's 8 and there's 7 and there's another 7. Now remember, that's not our final answer because we took the sum that our rules told us to do over here, but remember we have to keep the sign of the numbers that we were adding. Both of those numbers, if you remember, are negative, so we have to be sure that we include that negative as part of our final answer. This is another situation where a negative plus a negative will always give us a negative number. Our second example, negative 214 plus 504. If we take a close look at the numbers, we can see that their signs are different. One of them is negative 214, but notice that the 500 is a positive. Their signs are different, and so we're going to take the difference. We need to subtract. When we subtract, we want to be sure that the number with the larger absolute value goes on top. That's what's going to allow us to do our subtraction. So since 504 is larger than 214, we're going to take the 504, and from that we're going to subtract the absolute value of 214. We're going to line things up and we're going to go ahead and do our subtraction. So 4 minus 4 is 0. Now notice here we're going to need to do a little bit of borrowing. So the 5 is going to become a 4. We're going to carry the 1 over there. 10 minus 1 is 9. And 4 minus 2 is 2. So 290. Now we want to take a look at our signs. Remember, we had one positive and one negative. The positive number was the 504, which had the larger of the absolute values, so our final answer is going to be positive 290. Now again, we don't have to show that positive sign there. We can just write it as just plain old 290. But we want to be sure that we're thinking about that sign even if we don't write it in there. Now our last example could be a little bit scary. I see these really, really big numbers and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be really awful. But take a close look. Positive 54,918 plus a negative 54,918. Notice that those two numbers are opposites of each other. 54,918 is the opposite of negative 54,918, and vice versa. Anytime you add two numbers that are opposites of each other, the answer will always equal 0. You might say, well, how does that work? Remember, if the signs are different, we take the difference. And so if we have 54,918 minus 54,918, we're going to end up with 0.